which movements are important? I tend to work with new athletes, and Mike agreed with this, with new athletes on maximum velocity and work my way backwards. And when I'm sort of setting them up and teaching them, I find that is a lot easier. The maximum velocity mechanics are easier for them to understand, but actually relate back to drive phase, to the transition through, very, very well, because the movements are similar. You're just changing the force directions slightly, but the way they're set up, the body positions, everything else is easier, and it's easier for them to actually understand and execute. So I tend to start at max velocity and work backwards. And if I'm working with squads of athletes, then that's the way I tend to work is, right, we'll start with max velocity and we work our way backwards and we finish up in drill, starts, drills, and blocks and everything else. And that's the sort of way I've done the presentation tonight. Good starting point for sort of guidance and pointers, and I'm not intending to talk you through these. I will email them out to anybody who wants them at the end if you've not already seen them. Is the England Athletics Technical Excellence Framework, which has been written and has pointers at the different times. Sort of things you should be considering, things you should be looking at, things you can be giving your athletes, and it is a good starting point for. This is what you should be thinking of at this moment in time of the race, and it splits it between 1s, 2s, 4s, hurdles, everything else, and it in fact covers all the different event groups. So if you are here trying to pick up something and you fall on the different event groups, if you speak to your regional lead for that event or the event group leader, I'm sure they can send that out for your event as well. That is a good starting point, but it doesn't delve into the complexities of movement and force production, how that force is applied, how movements work. It just gives you the basic fundamentals to start and just give you a bit of an idea. I've only picked out, I think, 4 of these. It's, drive phase for the 100. It will give you sort of ideas about where the head should be, the torso should be, arms, legs, feet should be, what the action should be. Transition phase, don't necessarily agree with 30 to 60, but that's semantics, but it gives you a few things that you should be looking at and what you should be looking at. Gives you some ideas on maintenance phase, what you should be looking at, where the leg should be, rear foot takeoff position. Foot gives you enough stuff that when you're looking at video of your athletes, trying to watch them run, it gives you some cues about what you should be looking at, what they should be doing at that moment in time. So it's a good starting point, but it goes through the 4s as well. So were there any questions, Mike? You'd mentioned one about...
Yeah, I was going to say we've got a couple. Yeah, if you wanted to go back to that one, about the split of time with the warm-up versus the drills versus the main session, and does that vary over times of the year? How do you play that?
Yeah, it does. It depends on the session, and depends what the session is. So I have different warm-ups for different sessions. We have a competition warm-up that we do. We have 3 other warm-ups. So if it's doing a start-based session, it will be it'd be a lot more mobility stuff through the hips. There'll be a lot more sort of start-based drills, obviously. So the drills change depending on the session as well. If we are doing some longer runs, if we're doing some tempo stuff in the winter, things like that, I have a longer warm up we do, which includes a lot more movement stuff, a lot more stability stuff, because they're not going, hard out. It's one of the recovery sessions, so I will throw in a longer warm up as part of that, and we will probably spend more time doing drills as part of that session. But coming into the summer, it tends to be, we tend to have fairly static warm-ups and practice the competition warm-up a lot more. We tend to practice sort of the drills we'll do pre-competition a lot more, and just get them prepared. So that's ingrained. This is what they do. This is how they do it. And this is when they do it. So that tends to be what I do. I've 3 warm-ups, no, 4 warm-ups actually, 3 plus the competition, 4 warm-ups, and 4 sets of drills that we do, and I'll sometimes mix and match those drills. Sometimes we might do more than 1 set of the drills. We might do 2 sets of the drills, and that's the way I match it. It just purely depends on the session. But what I do try and do is the starts drills. I'll show you. We do try and keep a base of starts drills all the way through the winter. I don't have access to indoor facilities, so the stuff I'll show you is stuff that we do all the way through the winter, which is quite quick, tries to replicate the starts without them having to do starts, tries to keep the movement in the brains, just so we keep that base of acceleration mechanics right the way through the winter, so that when we get into the summer, when we perhaps go indoors, which we obviously haven't been able to do this winter, but when we go indoors and do some training indoors, they've already got that fundamental base of movement within it. Do you do anything different, Mike?
No, not really. Yeah, as you say, the various things for various purposes. I think if the more you talk to some of the coaches, you'll see different things. If we think about that word potentiation, you're trying to sort of gear up to what you're about to do. So it's things like that. We actually had I'll bring that word up again because somebody's mentioned that it would be good to find a better word on that.
Than potentiate. I quite like that one.
You quite like that. Okay. Yeah. I think with that, I think terminology is obviously a word like that, depending on the kind of athletes you're dealing with. You'd water that down a bit. Not to necessarily use that particular word, but interesting comment. And question around, say do the simple things well, but who decides what's simple? Well, I suppose I'll give them my thing on the, what they do on hopscotch, which for some people is extremely easy, and for some people it's extremely complicated. So it depends who you've got in front of you, I think. Yeah,
I have disability athletes train with us, and some of the stuff that the able-bodied find simple, I find it extremely difficult. And for them, that is challenging movement. But to simplify it even further would actually take away from their running. So, but new athletes find some of the stuff that the older athletes find simple really quite difficult, and they find some of the movement stuff quite difficult. You'll see some of the drills, some of the split stuff, which the older, the athletes have been with us for quite a while, just breeze through them, flick through, and the young ones, you can see them just going, or the newer ones, you can see them sort of, which leg do I use? How do I do this? How do I do that? So that's fair enough. Who decides what's simple? Well, it's a coach. You set up your philosophy and set up what you believe, and you may need to spend some more time working with them, perhaps taking them to one side with one of the other coaches, taking them to one side and just actually talking them through stuff, working them through stuff, and picking that up. So good point.
So hopefully, Jonathan, we've answered yours about the same drills each session. It does vary depending on the circumstances. What's your thoughts, Graham, on this one? And do your drills work for all age groups?
I've only got under 17s and upwards in my group, but the vast majority of the drills that we do, the coaches who coach the younger athletes have been across and spent time with me, looking at why we do things, what we do things for, and the vast majority they've actually picked up and started to use. And I've got to say, when athletes eventually do move up into our group, they tend to be a hell of a lot more. And I think it's the benefit of having really good coaches working with the younger age groups. But they tend to be much more able to move. They're not coming with huge problems that they were previously. They don't come with the huge movement problems that new athletes perhaps coming in to the group from who perhaps either haven't done it or are moving from perhaps another group, don't come in with the movement problems that the other athletes do, and come better prepared. They've got a base of good movement, and I think, fundamentally you decide for yourselves, but I can see no reason why all of these can't be used for younger athletes. We had, over lockdown, we had a period where, because you couldn't travel and you could still coach 6 athletes, we went very regional based. So the club I coach at, their geographic area is massive. So I based myself fairly close to home on a decent grass field. And all the athletes in that local area came to me. So I had younger athletes, sort of 11, 12-year-olds that I wouldn't normally have had. And you could see them really struggling with it because it was that their core conditioning wasn't good enough to perhaps do some of the real power drills. And I haven't put the video in. It's on one of the other webinars that I've done. And we actually looked at the difference and looked at who was struggling. I think it was athletes, training your athletes can do at home or in lockdown. I've forgotten which one it was, but and you could see actually the ones really collapsing, the knees collapsing. I would have taken them off some of the high impact drills that you'll see the older athletes doing, and gone back to basics and dropped them down. So the base ones, yes. Some of the higher impact ones, some of the real explosive ones, no, I wouldn't do those with the younger athletes, because you will see, and you can see if they're ready or not, because you will see the knee collapsing, you'll see them not able to absorb the force, you'll see, the back collapsing. And as soon as you see that, if you carry on that, you're going to go down, you're going to get injuries. So the lower impact stuff, yes, I think they apply to everyone. The higher impact stuff you'll see. So some of the end videos, I wouldn't apply to younger athletes. But if you're looking at your athletes, you'd work that out yourself, and you'd look and go, oh, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look good. Let's just ease back off that.